How can you tell if you've understood something? If you've understood something, it means that you can explain it simply. Now, in your school English classes, they basically reward you for expressing yourselves as complicatedly and disorganizedly as possible. But the simple fact is this: the true mark of intelligence, the true mark of understanding, is the ability to express something very simply. If you understand something, you should be able to explain it to a child, to a small child. Right here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what this reading process actually looks like. This skill is going to draw from grammar, it's going to draw from logic, vocabulary, but overall, the most important part of this is my goal in understanding, in reading and understanding this, is to try to make it as simple as I possibly can. You've probably seen the sentence before, and maybe you understood what it meant, or maybe you didn't. If you were in English class, what you probably did to pretend to understand it is just took a bunch of words and phrases and put them together, and your teacher said, "Yeah, fine." But real understanding doesn't mean you're taking like random bits of this and like rephrasing it, so you're just chopping it up and putting it back together like some sort of a weird Frankenstein's monster. It means we want to understand this very simply. Let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so I'm going to first go ahead and read this out loud. When, in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. Wow. That is a famous sentence, but it's not an easy sentence. Now, we could break this down in various different ways. Grammatically, we would probably start with the independent clause first, which would be this last little bit here. Or we could actually, the independent clause is just this little bit. Or we could do it left to right, whatever. So I'm going to actually just go do this in a very simple left to right type way. When in the course of human events. What does this mean? What are human events? Human events are like events involving people. I mean, history is human events. An earthquake that happens in the middle of nowhere where there's no people, that's not a human event. A civil war is a human event. An election is a human event. So a human event is literally just like an event that involves people. All right. So when you say when in the course of human events, it's just like saying when in history, when during current events, when during the events that affect humans, something's going to become necessary. What becomes necessary? One people need one to dissolve the political bands. What's a band? Well, you know what a rubber band is, right? A band is just something that connects one person to another person, or one thing to another thing. So if you want to dissolve a band, what does it mean? It means we're breaking the connections between two peoples. So when it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another. So this first part here, all it says is when one group wants to separate from another group. That's it. Notice how simple that is. Now, of course, the original language is big and flowery. That's fine. That's how they chose to write it at the time. But our understanding has to be simple and clear, not confused and full of a bunch of nonsense. So all this is saying here is when one group wants to separate from another group, and so they want to separate from another group and to assume, when they say among the power of the earth, that means like of all the powers of the earth, which can be just anything that's any kind of a power, we're going to assume the separate and equal station to which... What does that mean? It means when they want to become separate from a group and equal to that group. So in other words, we're saying we're separating from this group. We're dissolving these political bands. We're going to separate from one group and declare ourselves equal to that group. So we're not a vassal of that group. We're not a subordinate to that group. We're not a colony of that group. We're separate and equal to that group. And why are they allowed to do that according to them? Well, the laws of nature and God let them do that. So what does this mean so far? When one group wants to separate from another group and also be equal to that other group. Not so complicated. a decent respect to the opinions of mankind. Who's mankind? It means people in general. So, because they have respect for the opinions of the people, of the general people of the world, if you have that kind of respect, that requires that you should, what, declare the cause which impelled them to separation? That means just say why you are separating. This thing, read simply, basically means if one group wants to separate from another group, they should tell everybody why. That's it. Now that's a simple, simple idea. And you could apply that to something else. You could apply that to a company. Let's say that some people in a company decide they want to leave and set up their own company. They should tell people why. You could apply that to a family. If some part of a family wants to leave the rest of the family, they should tell people why. Why? Because out of respect for people in general, out of respect for the opinions of the general population, we're just going to tell people why. Now, obviously, I went through this a little bit quicker here than you might do in actual class, but the general principle doesn't change. If I said that what this means is that under the circumstance of human events, if it is necessary for one people to take the bands that are political and dissolve them, yeah, see what I'm doing there? I'm just doing what everyone does in English class, which always gets you an A in English class, even if you don't know what you're doing. If I just take these words and reorder them, that is not proof of understanding. In fact, that's proof that I don't really understand this. The only way to prove understanding both to yourself and to the teacher is to be able to express it very, very, very simply. That is not usually going to involve taking words from the sentence. When you're actually explaining something simply, you're not going to take the words in the sentence and reorder them. That's not understanding. That's like trying to fake out the teacher. And with your English teachers at school, it works. At Vora Method, it's obviously not going to work. What you need to do whenever you're doing any kind of reading is make sure that you've understood the point very simply. If you haven't understood it simply, it just means you haven't understood it. And what are the tools you use? You're going to use grammatical analysis. You're going to use, to a certain extent, your life experience. You're going to use vocabulary. You're going to use logic. You're going to use all these things, and you're going to build all of these skills inside of Vora Method. Don't worry. But at the end of it, your goal is to express and understand every idea, every sentence, every paragraph as simply as you possibly can. And that, by the way, is also good general advice for your writing. If you want to make your writing better, make it simpler. That really flowery style that used to be in vogue today, when people see that really flowery style, it usually is something that is considered proof of a disorganized mind or just somebody who's pompous, or more commonly, somebody whose ideas are really, really simplistic and stupid and are hiding behind big words and complex language so that no one figures out that they don't really have anything to say. Express yourself simply, read simply, make sure you understand whatever you're reading as simply as humanly possible. If you can do that, then I guarantee you're going to dominate the reading section of any exam, any school class, any college class. It all comes from this principle of understanding things very, very simply.